The silence in Firebase Delta felt heavier than the gravitational pull of Kepler 442b itself. Captain Elena Torres stood alone in what had once been a bustling command center, now littered with the debris of a war that humanity was losing badly. Sparking terminals cast intermittent shadows across walls scarred by plasma burns, and the acrid smell of melted circuitry hung thick in the recycled air. Elena's fingers traced the edge of a holographic tactical display, showing the Zarathi Empire's final advance. Red markers swarmed across the projection like blood cells converging on New Haven, the last bastion of human civilization on this world. 50,000 souls who had already lost everything once, refugees from the outer colonies that had fallen in the first wave of the Zarathi Crusade. She closed her eyes and could still hear the voices of her regiment, Colonel Hayes barking orders, Sergeant Park's nervous laugh, Private Okafor humming old Earth songs during the quiet watches, all of them gone now, vaporized in the surprise attack 3 days ago that had turned Firebase Alpha into a crater of molten glass. Elena had only survived because she'd been on reconnaissance, returning to find nothing but ash and the metallic taste of defeat. Her comm unit crackled to life with the voice of Admiral Chen from the evacuation fleet in orbit. Captain Torres, this is Exodus Command. What's your status? Elena straightened, muscle memory forcing her spine rigid despite the exhaustion that threatened to buckle her knees. Firebase Delta secure, Admiral. All defensive systems operational. The lie came easily. Half the automated turrets were offline, and she was the entire garrison. Good. Intelligence suggests the Zarathi will reach your position in approximately 4 hours. The last civilian transport launches in 6. We need you to hold that line, Captain. Can you do that? Elena looked at the tactical display again, watching those red markers creep closer like a tide of destruction. Mathematics didn't lie. One soldier, even a decorated officer with 15 years of combat experience, couldn't hold against what was coming. The Zarathi Empire didn't take prisoners, didn't negotiate, didn't show mercy. They viewed humanity as a cancer to be excised from the galaxy. Roger that, Admiral. I'll hold the line. Elena. The Admiral's voice softened, abandoning protocol. They'd served together on the Meridian campaign, back when the war was just skirmishes over mining rights. I'm sorry. For all of it. For Hayes, for your people, for what we're asking of you. Just get those people to safety, sir. That's all that matters now. After the connection closed, Elena allowed herself a moment of pure, unguarded grief. She thought of Lieutenant Kai Morrison, whose laugh could cut through the darkest moments of war, whose hands had traced gentle paths across her skin in stolen moments between battles. He'd died in the ambush at Sector 7, taking shrapnel meant for a wounded private. She'd held him as his blood painted the alien soil red, watching the light fade from eyes that had seen too much but somehow still held hope. Elena moved through the firebase like a ghost haunting her own life, checking weapon systems, reviewing defensive protocols, and trying not to think about how quiet it was without Kai humming while he worked. He'd always hummed, classical pieces from Earth, half-remembered lullabies, sometimes just wordless melodies that seemed to emanate from his soul. She stopped at the armory and selected her gear with methodical precision: pulse rifle, sidearm, plasma grenades, emergency medical supplies she probably wouldn't need. Her reflection in the polished metal of a weapons locker showed a woman aged beyond her 32 years, dark hair pulled back severely, brown eyes that had seen too many friends die. The tactical computer chimed softly. 3 hours until contact. Elena sealed her combat armor and walked toward the main defensive position, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Outside, the alien sunset painted the sky in shades of copper and gold, beautiful despite everything. As she took her position, behind the heavy plasma cannon, Elena whispered a promise to the memory of everyone she'd lost. I'll make it count. The barren ground between Firebase Delta and the advancing Zarathi forces stretched like a graveyard of failed dreams. Elena's boots crunched through crystallized sand as she moved toward her final position, the weight of her equipment nothing compared to the burden of absolute solitude. The alien landscape offered no comfort, Twisted metal spires jutted from purple-tinted earth like the bones of some prehistoric beast, while twin moons cast their sickly light across the battlefield. Her tactical display showed the enemy advance. 3 divisions of Zarathi shock troops, their biomechanical war machines grinding forward with inexorable purpose. Elena checked her rifle's power cell and settled behind a makeshift barricade of debris. Trying to calculate how many she could take with her before the inevitable end, static crackled through her comm system, then cleared to reveal something impossible. Elena, can you hear me? Elena, please respond. The voice froze her blood. Kai's voice, warm with that slight accent from the mining colonies carrying the same inflection he'd used when calling her name in the darkness of their shared quarters. Elena's hands trembled as she touched her comm unit, certain that grief had finally broken her mind. This isn't real, she whispered to herself. Combat stress. Hallucination. He's dead. Elena, listen to me. The main assault is a feint. Check. You're 6. There's a flanking force moving through the canyon to your west. 47 hostiles, light armor, ETA 12 minutes. Elena spun, scanning her tactical display. The sensors showed nothing in the western approach, but something made. Her switch to thermal imaging. Heat signatures bloomed on her screen, exactly 47 of them moving through the canyon with practiced stealth. How did you... she started, then stopped herself. Dead men don't give tactical advice. Elena, I know this is impossible. I know what you saw happen to me at Sector 7. But I'm here and I'm real, and right now we have bigger problems than metaphysics. The familiar mixture of humor and competence in his voice was exactly right, down to the way he said metaphysics like it personally offended him. Elena felt tears cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks as she repositioned to face the flanking force. Kai, if this is you, and if this is somehow really you, I need you to know that I... Save it for when we're both breathing at the end of this, Captain. Right now, I need you to trust me. The flanking force emerged from the canyon exactly as the voice had predicted. Elena's training took over, her rifle speaking in controlled bursts that dropped 3 Zarathi before they could establish cover. But there were too many, and her position was exposed. Fall back to the secondary position, Kai's voice urged. I'm coming to you. Coming from where? Kai, you're dead. I watched you die. Elena, behind you. She spun as a Zarathi warrior's plasma blade hummed through the space where her head had been. Her sidearm appeared in her hand without conscious thought, 3-shot center mass dropping the alien before it could strike again. But more were coming, and her ammunition wouldn't last forever. Then she saw him. A figure emerged from the smoke and chaos, moving with deadly precision through the Zarathi ranks. At first glance, he was a stranger, taller than she remembered, his left arm gleaming with cybernetic enhancement, a network of fine scars mapping his face like a constellation of pain. But the way he moved, the way he held his weapon, the protective angle of his body as he carved a path toward her position. Kai? The word escaped as barely a whisper. He reached her position and dropped into cover beside her, his familiar brown eyes meeting hers through the chaos of battle. Those eyes held recognition, relief, and something else, a depth of suffering that hadn't been there before. Hello, Elena. His voice was the same, but rougher, aged by experiences she couldn't imagine. I know I have a lot of explaining to do. She reached out with trembling fingers to touch his face, half expecting her hand to pass through him like a ghost. But his skin was warm, real, solid beneath her palm. The cybernetic enhancement along his jaw hummed softly under her touch. This isn't possible, she breathed. Kai's hand covered hers, pressing it against his cheek. A lot of impossible things have been happening lately, but we're alive and we have a job to finish. Plasma fire erupted around their position as the main Zarathi force closed in. Elena felt the familiar surge of combat adrenaline, but now, it was mixed with something she'd thought lost forever. Hope. The abandoned supply depot offered temporary sanctuary from the chaos outside. Elena sealed the heavy blast door behind them, while Kai activated a portable signal jammer, his cybernetic arm interfacing directly with the device. The silence that followed felt sacred after hours of weapons fire and alien war cries. Elena turned to face him properly for the first time, drinking in details she'd thought lost forever. Kai was leaner than before, his movements carrying a mechanical precision that spoke of extensive augmentation. Silver threads traced patterns beneath the skin of his neck, and when he turned his head, she could see where synthetic components had been grafted to natural bone. "You're really here," she whispered, stepping closer. "How is this possible?" "I held you while you died, Kai. I felt your heart stop." Kai's expression was a mixture of pain and tenderness as he reached for her. "I did die, Elena. Technically. For 3 minutes and 14 seconds before the Concordat medics got my heart beating again." The Concordat? A faction of Zerathi who oppose the Empire's war. They've been working in secret, trying to broker peace between our species. His cybernetic hand hesitated before touching her face as if he were afraid she might recoil. "They found me in the wreckage at Sector 7, more dead than alive. Bringing me back required extensive modifications." Elena leaned into his touch, her eyes closing as she savored the impossible warmth of his skin. "I don't care what they had to do. You're alive. That's all that matters." "Is it?" Kai's voice carried a note of uncertainty she'd never heard before. "Look at me, Elena. Really look. Half my body is synthetic now. My left lung is mechanical. When I sleep, I dream in code sometimes. Am I still the man you loved? Or am I something else wearing his face?" Elena opened her eyes and stepped back, studying him with the intensity she'd once reserved for tactical assessments. She saw the scars, the subtle glow where artificial components interfaced with living tissue, the way his left eye tracked with slightly mechanical precision. But she also saw the way he held his shoulders when he was uncertain, the unconscious gesture of running his right hand through his hair, the precise way he'd positioned himself between her and the door. "Do you still hum when you're working?" she asked quietly. Kai blinked, caught off guard. Yes. Why? Do you still get that little crease between your eyebrows when you're thinking too hard about something?" His hand moved instinctively to smooth the expression she'd described. "Elena, do you still love me?" The question hung in the recycled air between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Kai's augmented features couldn't hide the raw emotion that crossed his face, hope and fear and desperate longing all at once. "More than my own existence," he said simply. "That's what kept me alive when everything else should have failed. The thought of seeing you again." Elena closed the distance between them in 3 quick steps, her hands fisting in the fabric of his combat suit as she pulled him down to her. Their lips met with desperate intensity, months of grief and separation, pouring into a single moment of contact. Kai's arms encircled her, one warm with life, the other cool with synthetic precision, both trembling with the force of his emotion. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Elena rested her forehead against his, her hands mapping the familiar territory of his chest and shoulders, learning the new landscape of scars and augmentation. "I mourned you," she whispered against his lips. "I wanted to die when I lost you. I'm sorry, God, Elena, I'm so sorry. I tried to contact you, but the Concordat couldn't risk exposure. If the Empire discovered their involvement..." Elena silenced, him with another kiss, this one slower, deeper, carrying all the love she'd thought buried with him. Kai responded with careful intensity, his enhanced strength held in perfect check as his hands rediscovered the curve of her spine, the softness of her hair. They sank together onto a storage crate, Elena straddling his lap as her fingers worked at the seals of his armor. Each piece revealed more of the price he'd paid for survival: surgical scars, synthetic patches, the subtle ridges where organic met artificial. She kissed each mark tenderly, claiming every part of him as still hers. "Elena," Kai breathed, his hands tangling in her hair. "We should. The mission can wait 5 more minutes," she murmured against the column of his throat. "I need to know you're real. I need to feel you alive." Their reunion was fierce and tender, desperate and reverent all at once. In the darkness of the abandoned depot, they reclaimed each other with touches that spoke of love stronger than death. Promises whispered against skin that affirmed their bond transcended the boundaries between flesh and steel. But paradise never lasted long in wartime. The building shook as artillery struck nearby, and their communicators crackled with urgent transmissions. Elena felt Kai tense beneath her, his tactical instincts reasserting themselves. "The Empire knows about my involvement now," he said quietly, helping her reseal her armor. "They'll throw everything they have at this position." Elena checked her weapon and activated her combat display. "Then we'd better make sure we're ready. For them." As they prepared to face the storm together, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced since Sector 7, the absolute certainty that she wasn't fighting alone. The Zerathi Empire's full assault commenced at dawn, turning the landscape around Firebase Delta into a hellscape of plasma fire and twisted metal. Elena and Kai had transformed the abandoned supply depot into a fortress, using every piece of military engineering knowledge between them to create interlocking fields of fire and defensive positions that would make the enemy pay dearly for every meter. "Contact bearing 270, Elena called out, her rifle tracking a squad of Zerathi shock troops as they advanced through the rubble. Her shots found their marks with mechanical precision, dropping 2 aliens before they could reach cover. Kai's enhanced reflexes allowed him to process multiple targeting solutions simultaneously, his cybernetic eye painting threat assessments across his visual field. His weapon spoke in controlled bursts, each shot calculated for maximum effectiveness. "Elena, they're probing our eastern flank. I count 15 hostiles moving through the cargo containers." "I see them." Elena shifted position, her movements fluid despite the chaos around them. After 15 years of combat, battlefield awareness was as natural as breathing. "Kai, there's something else. I'm reading massive energy buildup from their command ship in orbit." Kai's enhanced systems interfaced with the facility's sensors, processing data streams that would overwhelm unaugmented humans. What he found made his blood run cold. "It's a planetary bombardment cannon. They're not planning to capture this world, they're going to sterilize it." "How long?" Elena asked, never taking her eyes off the advancing enemy. 6 hours, maybe 7. The weapon needs time to achieve full charge." Kai's tactical mind was already running calculations. "Elena, even if the evacuation fleet launches on schedule, they won't clear the system in time. The energy cascade will destroy everything within 2 light minutes of the planet." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. 50,000 civilians, gone in an instant of alien fire. The children she'd sworn to protect, the families who'd already lost everything once. "There has to be something we can do." "The Concordat has been monitoring Imperial communications," Kai said, dropping a Zerathi warrior with a precise headshot. "If we can transmit the weapon signature to their hidden fleet, they might be able to coordinate a strike. But the transmission array is in the main firebase and it's crawling with hostiles." Elena looked across the battlefield toward Firebase Delta's main structure, now swarming with alien troops like insects on a corpse. The distance was perhaps 200 meters, but it might as well have been 200 kilometers given the enemy concentration. "We'll have to fight our way through," she said simply. Kai's cybernetic enhancements couldn't hide the human emotion in his voice. "Elena, it's suicide. Even with my augmentations, we can't handle those numbers." "Then we trying." Elena's voice carried the absolute certainty of a soldier who'd already accepted the worst outcome. "Those people trusted us to protect them. I won't let them down again." Kai studied her profile, seeing the same fierce determination that had made him fall in love with her during the Meridian campaign. She would charge into hell itself if duty demanded it, and he wouldn't let her go alone. "Together, then," he said, checking his ammunition count. "Like always." They moved across the battlefield like dancers performing a deadly ballet, their partnership honed by years of combat and love. Elena's intuitive understanding of battlefield flow complemented Kai's enhanced processing power, creating a synergy that turned 2 soldiers into something approaching an unstoppable force. Kai's cybernetic strength allowed him to tear through Zerathi battle armor, while his enhanced reflexes kept Elena covered during her more daring tactical movements. Elena's natural leadership instincts guided their advance, finding paths through the chaos that Kai's computational abilities confirmed as optimal. "Plasma grenade, high arc!" Elena called, pointing toward a cluster of aliens using a wrecked transport for cover. Kai's throw was perfectly calculated, the explosive detonating with surgical precision. "Multiple contacts, eastern approach," Kai responded, his enhanced hearing detecting movement Elena couldn't perceive. "I'll take point, you cover our 6. They fought with the desperate efficiency of people who knew the universe was counting on them. Every shot had to count. Every movement had to serve their ultimate goal. Elena felt the familiar calm of absolute focus descend over her, the same state she'd achieved during the worst moments of the war, when everything fell away, except the mission and the person fighting beside her. "We're not going to make it," Kai said as they paused behind the twisted remains of an armored vehicle. Zarathi forces were converging from 3 directions, and their ammunition was running dangerously low. Elena looked at him, this man who'd literally come back from the dead to fight beside her, and felt a moment of perfect clarity. "Yes, we are. Because this isn't just about duty anymore, Kai. It's about proving that some things are stronger than death." She kissed him fiercely, tasting salt and copper and the metallic tang of recycled air. When they separated, both were smiling with the mad confidence of soldiers who'd found something worth dying for. "Last magazine," Elena said, checking her rifle. "Mine too," Kai replied, his cybernetic systems already calculating their final assault vector. "Then let's make it count." They charged toward Firebase Delta together, weapons blazing, hearts synchronized, ready to rewrite the ending of a war that everyone thought was already lost. The transmission array sparked to life just as Elena and Kai's ammunition ran out. They'd fought through impossible odds, leaving a trail of fallen Zarathi in their wake, but now faced the final moment with empty weapons and failing strength. Elena's hands flew over the communication controls while Kai stood guard with nothing but a combat knife and his augmented reflexes. "Concordant frequencies are encrypted," Elena said, her voice tight with concentration. "I need 30 more seconds." "You don't have 30 seconds," Kai replied, watching Zarathi reinforcements pour into the firebase. His enhanced vision counted at least 40 hostiles converging on their position. "Elena, I need you to know something. Save it for after. I love you beyond reason, beyond death, beyond anything that makes sense in this universe." Kai's cybernetic arm interfaced directly with the facility's defense grid, turning automated systems against their former controllers. "Whatever happens next, remember that." The transmission burst out across space on concordant frequencies, carrying the energy signature of the Imperial planet killer weapon. Elena felt a moment of savage satisfaction as confirmation signals began returning. The hidden fleet had received their intelligence and was moving to intercept. Then the firebase shook as massed Zarathi forces launched their final assault. Elena and Kai stood back to back in the transmission room, surrounded by the enemy but no longer alone. They'd sent their message. They'd given the innocents a chance. If this was where their story ended, at least they'd ended it together. "For what it's worth," Elena said, drawing her sidearm for the last time, "this beats dying alone." "Much better company," Kai agreed, his combat knife gleaming in the artificial light. The Zarathi warriors rushed their position in a wave of chittering battle cries and plasma fire. Elena and Kai met them with everything they had left: skill, determination, and love transmuted into pure fighting instinct. But just as the overwhelming numbers threatened to crush them, the sky above Firebase Delta erupted in light. Concordant warships materialized from stealth, their weapons painting the battlefield in brilliant cascades of energy. The hidden fleet had arrived not just to destroy the planet killer weapon, but to join the battle directly. Elena watched in amazement as Zarathi soldiers throughout the firebase suddenly turned their weapons on their former commanders, revealing themselves as Concordant infiltrators who had been waiting for this moment. "This is Concordant Fleet Command," a voice spoke through the communication array. "Imperial forces, you are ordered to stand down. Your planet killer weapon has been destroyed, and concordant forces have assumed control of this system. Elena and Kai stood among the debris of battle, hardly believing they'd survived. Around them, Zarathi soldiers were laying down their weapons as concordant ships broadcast messages of peace and reconciliation. "Did we just witness the end of the war?" Elena asked, leaning against Kai's shoulder as exhaustion finally claimed her. "I think we helped write it," Kai replied, his arm tightening around her. "Turns out the Concordate has been planning this for months. They just needed proof that humans and Zarathi could fight together, could trust each other enough to risk everything for a common cause." Admiral Chen's voice crackled through Elena's communicator. "Captain Torres, this is Exodus Command. We're reading massive changes in the tactical situation. What's your status?" Elena looked at Kai, then at the Zarathi and human soldiers beginning to work together to treat the wounded. "Mission accomplished, Admiral. The colony is secure." "How is that possible?" "It turns out some bonds are stronger than death itself, sir." 3 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of Concordate Station Alpha, watching human and Zarathi engineers work side by side to repair damage from the war. The first interspecies peace treaty in galactic history had been signed, just that morning, with Elena and Kai serving as witnesses to the moment that changed everything. "Any regrets?" Kai asked, joining her at the viewport. His cybernetic enhancements were less noticeable now, integrated seamlessly with his natural biology through concordant medical advances. "About which part? Nearly dying, thinking you were dead for months, or accidentally starting a galactic peace movement?" "Any of it. All of it." Elena considered the question seriously. The war had cost them both so much: friends, innocence, pieces of their souls that would never fully heal. But it had also given them something precious: absolute certainty about what mattered most. "No regrets," she said finally. "Except maybe not kissing you more often before Sector 7. Kai's laugh was the same sound that had kept her sane through the darkest moments of the war. "I think we can fix that problem going forward." Their kiss was interrupted by a chime from Elena's communicator. She was needed in the diplomatic wing. Apparently, her experience in interspecies combat had made her valuable in negotiating military cooperation agreements. "Duty calls," she said with mock resignation. "It always does," Kai agreed. "But this time we're serving something bigger than just survival." As they walked together through corridors filled with beings from a dozen different worlds, Elena reflected on the strange path that had brought them here. They'd started as soldiers following orders, became lovers stealing moments between battles, survived separation and death itself, and somehow emerged as architects of a new kind of peace. "So what happens next?" Kai asked as they reached the diplomatic section. Elena paused at the threshold, looking back at the man who'd literally fought his way back from death to stand beside her. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain but no longer hopeless. "Next, we build something beautiful," she said, "and we do it together." In the end, their final stand hadn't been final at all. It had been a beginning,